Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously fascinating journey through time to look at an incredible piece of architecture. I mean, we're talking about a building that evolved from a simple paper blueprint into a literal global icon. We're talking, of course, about the White House. But we aren't just going to look at it as a building made of stone and mortar. Actually, scratch that. We're going to explore the biography of this American symbol. We'll trace how it was born, how it was nearly destroyed, how it was completely gutted and rebuilt, and how it stood as a silent witness to centuries of history. It's an absolutely amazing story, so let's get into it. There's a great quote that says, "Behind these famous white walls lies more than 200 years of American history. It has survived wars, fires, assassinations, protests, and global crises." I really love this framing because it forces us to see the White House not merely as a house or even just an office, but as a living, breathing survivor. For more than 2 centuries, it has weathered the absolute best and the absolute worst of times, right alongside the nation that represents. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Designing the Executive Mansion. So every great symbol has to start somewhere, right? Back in 1790, Washington, D.C. wasn't the sprawling metropolis we know today. It was basically a wild, undeveloped landscape. But man, things moved incredibly fast once the decision was made. The Residence Act officially selected the Potomac River as the site for the new capital. Just imagine George Washington himself standing out there in the forests and rivers, reviewing parchment maps with surveyors to plot out this new federal city. By 1791, Pierre Charles L'Enfant had drawn up his really ambitious city plan. And just a year after that, in 1792, construction officially began. It was a massive, massive undertaking to carve a capital right out of the wilderness. But to build an executive mansion, you obviously need a blueprint. So they held a design competition. And the winner was this architect named James Hoban. He presented this stunning vision of Irish-inspired neoclassical architecture. His detailed blueprints promised a building that would project strength, elegance, and democratic endurance. It wasn't overly royal or super ostentatious, but it was incredibly dignified. It hit the nail on the head for what a young republic needed. Now, actually building this mansion was grueling, backbreaking work, and this brilliantly illustrates the immense human effort required to realize Hoban's vision. Workers cut heavy blocks of aqueous sandstone for the exterior walls, while craftsmen meticulously carved the columns that give the building its stately appearance. But we absolutely must remember who was doing this heavy lifting. The White House was built by a complex labor force where enslaved laborers worked side by side with skilled artisans. The foundation of this symbol of freedom was quite literally laid by those who were denied it. It's a profound, sobering piece of its historical biography. Moving right along, Section 2, The Great Fire of 1814. When the building was finally ready, its early years were, they were incredibly turbulent. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between then and now. In the year 1800, President John Adams and his wife Abigail became the very first residents. But guys, it wasn't the luxurious palace we picture today, not even close. The rooms were sparse, extremely drafty, and largely unfinished. In fact, Abigail Adams famously used the cavernous, unheated East Room simply to hang her wet laundry. Can you imagine? It's a night and day difference from the pristine, museum-like space filled with priceless art and artifacts that we see today. But the home's very existence was soon completely threatened. Fast forward to 1814, right in the middle of the War of 1812. British troops marched into Washington with torches in hand. The result? The catastrophic burning of Washington. Fires completely engulfed the White House. Smoke was billowing out, and heavy roof sections were literally collapsing inward. In the midst of this terrifying chaos, we get that legendary moment where First Lady Dolly Madison orchestrates a dramatic escape. She famously rescues the portrait of George Washington right before the flames could consume it. It was a devastating blow, though. The mansion was left as nothing more than a smoldering shell. But, as you'll see, the story definitely doesn't end in the ashes. James Hoban, the original architect, actually returned to supervise the massive reconstruction effort. Craftsmen worked tirelessly to rebuild the residence. And here, right here, is where a key piece of the building's identity was born. To cover the ugly scorch marks on the surviving stone, they applied a new, brilliantly white exterior finish. So that iconic look you see on the news every single night, it literally rose from the ashes to officially become the White House. All right, Section 3, Rebuilding and Expanding. So as the United States grew into a true global power, moving into the 20th century, the presidency expanded in scope, and the executive mansion had to evolve right alongside it. Over time, those iconic north and south porticos were added, which really defined the building's silhouette. But perhaps the most functional transformation happened under Theodore Roosevelt. He realized the mansion was way too crowded. Executive offices were spilling right into the family's living spaces. So Roosevelt modernized the layout by creating the West Wing. This effectively separated the intense, chaotic business of the presidency from the family's private life. Later on came the East Wing, the beautifully landscaped Rose Garden, and of course, the evolution of the world-famous Oval Office. Now, all this massive expansion took a hidden, frankly, terrifying toll on the original aging structure. By the time Harry Truman was president, engineers discovered severe, catastrophic structural failures. The building was literally in danger of collapsing right on top of the first family. So the crucial point is what happened next, known as the Truman Reconstruction. What followed was one of the most incredible engineering feats in American history. It was like a giant puzzle. First, they undertook a total interior demolition, completely gutting the inside while meticulously preserving those historic exterior walls. Then, they installed a massive, modern steel framework. Truman oversaw this renovation, essentially building a brand new, structurally sound modern building entirely inside the historic 18th century shell. It absolutely saved the White House from total destruction. Let's move to Section 4, a living stage of history. Ultimately, the architectural blueprints, the stone, the steel, they're really just the container. The true biography of the White House is found in its immense historical weight. Let's move to and see how this builds. Just think about the gravity of the moments that happened right inside these walls. Abraham Lincoln pacing the halls late at night, bearing the agonizing weight of the Civil War. Franklin D. Roosevelt charting the course to victory during World War II. John F. Kennedy sitting at his desk, addressing a tense, frightened nation. Ronald Reagan returning here to recover after a terrifying assassination attempt. And on a day-to-day basis, this is the stage for glamorous state dinners, intense cabinet meetings, and daily press briefings that literally shape global news. It is the epicenter of American endurance and leadership. Which brings us to the inside of today's White House. When you see it on your screen now, remember that it is performing 3 incredibly demanding jobs, all at the exact same time. First, it's the seat of executive power, housed in the Oval Office and the high-tech, historically vital Situation Room. Second, it's a place of grand ceremony, featuring those beautifully preserved spaces like the East Room, the Blue Room, and the State Dining Room. And third, despite all the immense power and ceremony, it is still the residence. It's a family home. And it does all this while acting as an enduring symbol of democracy, recognizable instantly as Marine One gracefully lands on the South Lawn. It's a functioning office, a living museum, and a home. The whole shebang, all rolled into one. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to wrap up on. What historical footprints will the next century leave on these famous white walls? For over 200 years, this building has witnessed America's greatest triumphs and its darkest moments. It was built from the wilderness, burned to the ground, rebuilt from the ashes, and gutted to its steel bones, yet it still stands today. It is so much more than a house. It's a living, breathing testament to a nation's history and its future. I really hope this explainer gave you a whole new appreciation for the extraordinary biography of the White House. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next one.